Hey guys, what is cracking? It is part two of our classic draft, post-draft analysis videos. We're going through, taking a look at every team, some strengths, weaknesses, what we think of these teams. We got a couple of the fellas in call again joining me. Your boy Krakenation, coach of the Boston Bisharps. First up, we got Sean, who wants to go ahead and say hi.
I'm disappointed that you didn't say what's cracking. It's Krakenation. How do I know who's talking to
Did I
me?
not open with that this time?
No, you said what's cracking. It's part two.
Oh, I guess we did
Did
just.
you change your name?
I changed my name to Part Two, so I'm now hi. My name is Part Two. Nice to no. We also got a different boy. So our boy Ente was on the scene for episode one, and then for this part two, we got another guy. If you want to go ahead and say hi, Jutun.
What's up?
So June's the coach of the Vancouver Golducks. Sean is the coach of the Air Force Corbinite. If you guys weren't aware, they're both some high skilled coaches in our league. So hopefully going to offer
Yeah.
those. Yeah, Sean is kind of butt. That's true.
True.
So hopefully,
Actually,
hopefully we can get some of that pro insight onto why all of your drafts suck.
pretty much.
Big
So
facts.
starting up with our boy here, this is actually our boy, Nashville Nido Kings, coached by Ant, a blind man, 1793, I think is his name, but he's the Dirty Ant. Um, so he, it's a funky draft. I really thought the round one Ferrothor was maybe the most bonkers pick of the draft. Just like, what pick? Just baffling. Last season in Draft Classic 7, Ant had zero hazard setting on his team. He seems to have just forgotten. So if you can't tell, he was like, okay, let's not do that again. And decided to not only draft Ferrothor in round one, but his hazard setting is just off the charts. He's just got hazards everywhere on this team. So I'm pretty sure he, not only learned his lesson, but maybe overlearned his lesson in a generation where heavy duty boots exists.
It's
um,
true.
but overall, I actually don't hate this team. It's got some awful speed tiers for what it's worth, but he's got some fun mons to use that I think, for a guy like Ant, I think Sableye Chansey is a cool late tier defensive core that he picked up. And should be able to support with Ferrothorn very well. So he's got the makings of a very good semi-stall team every week. Talonflame can also be a pretty good part of a lot of those drafts. Urshifu Rapid is obviously, he doesn't really have that top tier threat, which is a little weird because when you draft Ferrothorn round one, you forego a top tier threat. So the most threatening mon in this draft has to probably be Dragonite, right? Which
Yeah, probably.
which is not
Good.
yeah, it's not great. So that's a tough spot to be in. I gotta admit, Dragonite being when I'm flipping with this team, it's gonna be well, there's a Dragonite and an Urshifu Rapid and Strike, and after that, there's not a whole lot. But at least he's got a pretty good defensive core to fall back on, and hopefully he can play around. I do think that suits his playstyle more. Sean, what do you think?
I think this team is pretty terrible.
Okay, all right, get right to it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Mega Sableye Chansey is decent and Ferrothorn there, but then the rest of it is just way out there. His flying resist is Golem, so that's a little bit rough. Rabambi has absolutely zero place on this team because it's a garbage Pokemon and he doesn't even need the speed
He
tier
doesn't even
'cause
need
he
the
has
speed.
Talonflame.
Also, what Pokemon is benefiting from webs? Urshifu's
Medicham.
maybe the only one. Medicham a little
Medicham.
bit, I guess.
Medicham is dope though. I'll give him that. That's my favorite pick on this draft. Regular Medicham is awesome.
But
But
it just was weird.
yeah, his team just doesn't really fit together
Also,
at all.
we just talked about Dragonite being his only ice. Sorry, his only offensive powerhouse, a high tier threat, I guess. And then he's got hella ice weaknesses, and his only ice resist is what, Urshifu?
Yeah.
So it's
I mean, Chansey's kind of a nice weakness against some teams because ice
Special.
is mostly special.
yeah. So I don't know. Shun, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
I think it is a very weird team. I don't understand the dynamic of it at all. I also think it is very, I don't know, poorly put together.
Wow, we're just really
What?
ripping on this poor fella.
He has three Pokemon that can click an attacking move and you feel okay with it.
Is that Nidoqueen, Urshifu, Dragonite?
A Metacam too, but I wouldn't even Dragonite sometimes, Nidoqueen sometimes. It's weird. But it's it's Ant, so he'll end up loving
Yeah.
it, and that's all that matters.
No
I'm
goal bet.
gonna make a bold prediction. Ant's gonna get at least 3 wins this season.
That's a
I'd say he gets
bold-
at least 0.
Oh my god, poor Ant, guys. Holy crap. Anyone watching this part 2 that didn't watch part 1 just gonna assume we're only assholes. No, I think, for what it's worth, Ant does prefer to play more defensively. I don't think he's a very good player when it comes to pure offense. So I understand some of the decisions he made as far as, like, he's got a good defensive core to work with. I'm proud of him for not going fire, water, grass every single time. You know what I mean? Like, this is the first season in a while I haven't seen Ant go fire, water, grass core and be like, now we're good. So he went a little bit of a different direction. I think a better direction defensively. But just felt like offensively, when you take round 1 Ferrothorn, man, you are setting yourself up to be in a tough spot, you know? But yeah. Moving on, that's enough of crapping on poor Ant. We got the New Orleans Ninetales coming up. Let's have Sean, why don't you get us started?
All right. Well, this is a bit of an interesting team because he had the Weavile and he kind of traded out for Mega Gyarados, which I didn't love because I thought the Weavile Dragapult core was pretty dope.
Also, speed
Yeah,
tiers wise, it's like a big, like,
Yeah, it's definitely very interesting team.
well, what was his water type before that? None.
He had Swampert, I think,
Oh,
at some
okay,
point,
alright,
but he
alright.
traded it out for Mudsdale.
Yeah, I kind of like that first version more.
Yeah, I mean, there's not like any like super glaring like weaknesses like type wise. I just think the speed tiers kind of suck. Like
I think
Rose Raid
he's-
for 11 really sucks with no hidden power.
I think he's very weak to Edgequake. Like, he has
Like,
maybe a
Mudsdale's
couple of
pretty.
switches.
Mudsdale's pretty good.
Yeah, I would say
Right.
Mudsdale's probably fine, but
Oh, a lot of teams are weak to Edgequake overall, anyways. I feel like, but my big, if talking about like things that this team is weak to, I feel like giving up a Weavile for a Mega Gyarados, which keep in mind has to only gain this Dark type when it Mega evolves. This feels like a very Ghost weak draft to me. Obviously you have a Dragapult that's like really fast, but if a powerful Ghost type attacker, and a lot of drafts aren't the most Ghost resistant. But there's not even a normal, let alone a bulkier normal on this draft. So if a Ghost type gets in on like any of the slower mons in the team, and there are plenty of them, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like this draft is going to be really in a pickle trying to switch in, especially if Mega Gyarados hasn't Mega Evolved yet, which Mega Gyarados is mostly a sweeper, right? So you don't want to, like, it
I
takes
think
rocks.
the counterpoint to that is like if a ghost type comes in and you sack something like Mega Gyarados might be very well poised to sweep from there.
That's a fair
I
point.
think
That's a fair point.
It's like the one counter point that he has.
But
going
yeah,
for
I guess
there.
yeah, no, that's a reasonable counterpoint. It's just for me, I don't know. I feel like if people, I guess to that point, if people are well prepared for a Mega Gyarados sweep and they can just abuse their Ghost type. This is a draft that could really struggle with that. Just in general, just because missing a normal type, also missing a Psychic type, I guess, kind of helps that. But I kind of talked about this with a draft. I forget whose earlier, but missing Psychic type, that's another very versatile type that usually does a lot of different things for a team. So missing that is kind of unfortunate, but I don't know. Jutun, what are you thinking?
I like it a lot. It's very offensively based, which is probably why I like it. But that's also,
It's a very offensive draft. That's definitely true.
yeah, that's also kind of what worries me.
Should have seen 8Z's draft earlier too.
Is it bad? I can't.
No, it's like you thought Ant's draft was weird. Like
Yeah, that was
that was weird.
that's a weird draft.
Yeah.
I definitely think the speed tier is also just a gigantic problem on this draft. He has several good Scarfers, which is nice, like good Scarfers, like Togekiss is a terrific Scarfer. Magmortar definitely usable. Roserade is decent.
Roserade's
Fan
not
is
good. Mienshau's
a great Scarfer, yeah.
Vanillux is a good Scarfer.
So several usable Scarfers, and at least usable, if not like good Scarfers, which helps patch up that speed tier issue. But like people aren't gonna try to outspeed Dragapult very often, and that basically, if you consider that, like your top of the speed tier is 105 here, which is extremely slow otherwise, and there's just a big gap there. That can be kind of a problem. I don't know. We'll see how he's able to mitigate that. Also, just like it's very interesting to me to see a draft that has almost every mon in this draft is either weak to or resistant to ice. Um, so I just think that's kind of an interesting point I wanted to bring up. Just because if you get like an ice type that has like coverage to hit the things that resist ice, like could be a little bit of a pickle very quickly. Also, but that's a good offensive type, so that happens pretty regularly, I suppose. All right, let's keep going here. Let's move on to Noble Victory, coached by Ethan. Jutun, let's have you start us off this time.
He has a Slowpoke and a Venipede.
Yeah, he
That
he
might-
drafted an 8-mon draft. Like, let's be clear. And he
Well,
didn't even
the 8
he didn't even draft Dottler. I'm like, dude, how do you not?
Well,
draft-
the 8 mons he drafted are very good. They're very offensive, just like the last one. His very is very switch into your Pokemon and get a hit off and then switch back out. But that can only take you so far. I like it. It's very fast. It's very good. It's very balanced. It's just not defensive enough for
I
me.
feel like I hope he doesn't watch this video because I don't want to help him out too much. But I feel like this is a draft that would really benefit from a Dottler, like unironically, like just a good 1-point Weber, like a very good 1-point Weber. Like when you have things like Victini, Hydreigon, Kartana, like this is absolutely a draft that would benefit from having webs on the field. So I think that's a little, I don't know, those throwaway picks. I understand why they're throwaway picks, but just maybe could have tried a little harder on those.
You're reaching, bro. Like,
But it's an 8-mon draft. Silvally is always really cool because he can patch up so many different holes. Like, obviously, this draft is missing some types, but he has a Silvally, so is he really missing any types? He'll be whatever type he needs to be on a week-to-week basis. And obviously, he's got some nuclear offense if he wants it between Hydreigon and Victini, and then a really good cleaner now with some set of sweeper potential and Aerodactyl, Kartana too. So just very, very threatening offense that he's just going to be able to bring, like, I mean, think about, like, he's bringing 5 mons at 14 points and or higher every week, basically.
yeah, I think this is maybe like the best draft in the league. Me personally, I think I think Quillfish is really, really good as well as like kind of a budget option to maybe bring, if the matchup is right. I'm not huge on Electros, but it can sponge a hit and Volt Switch out on some things. So I think that's kind of all it's being used for is just, it doesn't need the longevity. It just, it's hard to deal a ton of damage to it right away because it has no weaknesses. So it's there to, maybe run like Assault Vest and take a special hit and Volt Switch out into something that is going to deal a lot of damage.
Which he has plenty
And-
of.
Yeah, and I just love the top end of this draft.
I mean-
I think it's going to be incredibly hard to deal with.
The top end of
Team
this draft is
Hydreigon,
terrifying.
Kartana. Giga Aerodactyl is also just a phenomenal Pokemon.
Yeah, no, the top end of this draft, absolutely terrifying. I agree. Maybe I'm being a stickler because this is definitely one of the best drafts in the league. I was just saying, like, those didn't need to be as throwaway picks at one point as he ended up having them be. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I think they're like both like very niche spring. Like it's clearly what he was trying to do. He was trying, Venipede is a hyper offense hazard stacker, and Slowpoke is like a really, really bad version of Slowbro. So it's also 1 point. So
Okay. Well, I mean, I just feel like, it's hard for me to imagine a situation where you're like, Slowpoke is going to outclass Quillfish in this matchup, for example. Just things like that.
no, I agree. It's just like
But
they're 1
but,
point
but
picks, like,
yeah, but the top end of
gives
his draft
shit?
is so scary, and then he has basically 3 mon. Like he's gonna bring his first 5 every single week, basically. Like the first 4, obviously he's gonna bring. Silvally, I feel like it's gonna be whichever type he wants to bring every week. You know what I mean?
right.
Like
And it's kind of picking between the next 3 as
And-
the last one. I
exactly.
think Zygarde's actually like pretty nice too. It's like barely even mentioned it, but it can definitely be really annoying for the wrong draft to face. And it can break down some bulky grass types that Kartana might not like. And then obviously, you can take it one step further and maybe lure in those bulky grass types for Victini to obviously absolutely demolish.
yeah.
I really like it.
Yeah, there's a decent amount of pivot access among those top mons also, which helps a lot. Like Victini, Hydreigon, and Silvally. just to get like if you don't like the matchup of your offense on the field right now, it's pretty easy to just keep grabbing momentum and then go into some like Electros or like a pivot like that also if you need be. So definitely a very scary team. I didn't want to maybe I undersold that, but just I don't know. It's an interesting strategy that I don't super want to be rewarded. um, you know what I mean? Like I don't want people to be like, oh, I'm just gonna draft 8 mon team and then pick up 2 1 pointers at the very end. But you know, it's the
I
system.
mean,
So
it's like what you're saying though. It's not like it doesn't have downsides. Like we're saying, oh, he's gonna bring these first four every week. Well, now I know you're bringing these four like every week, so
yeah, no,
it's a
exactly.
little bit easier to prep.
So we'll see how it shakes out. You know, bold strategy, Cotton. We'll see how it pays out. All right, so moving on to our boy free season draft classic 7 runner up. It's an interesting draft. I kind of like the Firewater Grass core he's put together here. It's a little bit more like a bulky offense. Firewater Grass core. I know, Sean. I know you're not a big fan of Arcanine in general, but I actually like it. I think it's kind of underrated with Boots being the advent of Boots. Also gets teleport. I just think it's a pretty cool mon. Mega DNC obviously a pretty scary offensive threat. My biggest qualm with this team is like again that like nobody's prepping for Regielki's speed, and then Mega DNC like is fast, obviously, but not the fastest top end Speedmon. Cause so basically, this is a draft that goes to 110, and that's it. And just several important missing typings, I think, in my opinion, kind of hurts this draft. Also, just pretty poor hazard clearing. Obviously, for what it's worth, I realize Corviknight is one of, if not the best hazard clearer in the game, and boots do exist. And like he also has a magic bounce Pokemon, I guess. But just I don't know if in a situation where like there's a hazard setter that can beat Corviknight 1v1. I feel like this team could get put in a little bit of a spot. But overall, I think actually I do like this draft in a lot of ways. I think those are just a couple issues I had with it. But there's a lot of mons I like individually on this draft a lot. Meloetta's a mon I love. Arachnids a mon I like a lot. I think Arcanine is underrated. Rillaboom is always great. Yeah, Jutun, what do you think?
I really like this team. It
Right.
has threats, it has defensive, it has speed, it has switching out, it has hazards, it has defense. And Regieleki is a spinner too. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Is it?
It is a
Is
spinner.
I forgot about that. Okay. No, never mind. I take back that comment then. I honestly didn't know that it got rapid spin.
Yes.
I did not
I
know that.
really like this team. I think he has the ability to very fast volt switch out into something bulkier that can also hit hard like Araquanid or Sandaconda or Meloetta and just start hitting things. Then he also has one of the most annoying bulky waters in the game and a very good offensive team to back it up.
Fair enough. Sean?
I don't know. I'm not so high on this draft. I know, like we said, like we had AT's draft earlier, and we're kind of talking about it being gimmicky. I can see this very slightly the same way. It's not really gimmicky as much as it is a little bit matchup dependent as well. Like obviously, Mega Diancie is a good offensive mon, pretty much regardless of matchup. Obviously, it struggles if you're playing some strong bullet punch. It's generally pretty hard to switch into, but there's definitely matchups where Rillaboom feels like it's basically a U-turn bot. It's really not going to be doing much,
If there's ever a
even though he
steal
did take
flying.
one of the. Well,
Is
he
it,
did take a big Rillaboom counter, but honestly, a lot of flying types Rillaboom really struggles against, and it's pretty much relegated to clicking U-turn a lot. Obviously, Regieleki, everyone knows it can't hit grounds, and that's kind of its
yeah, I see
whole
what you're
MO.
saying.
And other than that, it's like, yeah, you've got things that can hit hard. I mean, Meloetta is like a decent ball breaker, I guess. But, it's a lot of things that are, I guess, shaded more defensively or just generally not great, like just sheer outputting damage, like Arcanine and Araquanid. And I actually really don't like Arcanine still because I think it really sucks that you basically can't switch into the move knockoff this gen, or else you're very, very not useless, but you're very, very crippled, just like you were in previous gens.
Mm-hmm.
And as a counterpoint, though, I will say that I do like offensive Arcanine a lot more. I just think that people generally draft it to be like fairly defensive. So, maybe we'll see something, some kind of cool like burn up set or something, which I would love to see. But yeah, it just kind of feels like a little, if you can have checks for Rillaboom and Regieleki, like I feel like the draft might fall a little bit flat. Other than
Sure,
like
sure.
Mega Diancie, it might be hard to break through some of these teams.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I definitely get that. I think we just gotta kind of maybe look at this team at the standpoint of like it is pretty dependent on Mega Diancie to be like the matchup proof offensive mon. In a lot of regards, I just feel like maybe the rest of this team is gonna have to kind of be support as like a draft that just really supports Mega Diancie more than anything. Um, is how Free might have to play it, just because yeah, like you said, a lot of these mons like can otherwise be too matchup dependent to be reliable week to week. Even a
Yeah.
mon as good as Rillaboom, like you said.
I will say though, I do like the draft. I'm not like super high on it like you guys were. I think it's like maybe like a little bit above average draft.
All right, all right. Well, Free, I think Free's proven last season that he's on the come up and he's getting better and better every season. So I'm excited to see what he can do with a pretty good draft here. Um,
Sure.
Seattle Seahawks are reigning champ. The Dashing Sceptile drafted number one overall with our first ever unban of Zamazenta crowned. So it cannot hold an item to be clear, just in case anyone's watching. Um, this is a pretty cool draft to me. I think speed tiers are pretty decent overall, so I like that a lot. Zamazenta seems like it's going to be a cool mon and definitely going to be pretty powerhouse. I think he's kind of all in on Zamazenta for sure, being like a big staple on this team. But there are some offensive threats even lower down in the draft. I think like Mega Pinsir, while it's not like I loved Mega Pinsir in Gen 6, I was like a Mega Pinsir spam kind of guy. I know it's not what it used to be because Boots exists now and it's got the Air Late nerf, but Latios, Mega
No
Pinsir,
return
Mamswine,
either.
like there are just genuinely viable offensive threats throughout this draft, which makes I think a draft with Zamazenta like this is a draft that's very easy to just like there's a lot of wall breaking basically it feels like to me, a lot of wall breaking on a student like it's going to be tough to weather the storm when this draft starts clicking attacks. The one thing that's kind of tough I think a little bit is, and I don't think Zamazenta gets a pivot move, but there's not a lot of pivoting on this team from good mons. So
Yeah,
like
it doesn't get a pivot move.
so I don't think like Manaphy is the U-turner and the Decidueye, and that's I guess Sylveon gets baton
Sylveon
pass,
has baton pass, and I think
um,
Latios might also get it, but
but just like I don't know. I just feel like so when you draft like a lot of either not necessarily slow but just wall breaking power, slow pivots can be very helpful to get those wall breakers in for free. And this draft doesn't necessarily have slow bulky wall pivots. Manaphy being the closest thing to that archetype. Um, but Manaphy's I don't think the best mon in the world anymore. So I don't know. Jutun, what do you think?
This team is very scary. Like you said it too, all the wall breaking and everything, but it's also like very well built to where it could probably take on any team fairly well. It has it doesn't have a lot of pivoting, but it has a lot of offensive and defensive capabilities with just about any Pokemon. Like not every Pokemon obviously, but most of them.
Sure, sure. Sean?
I think this is like the one draft where I'm not loving the kind of lack of hazard removal. I mean, like removal is kind of like what Decidueye, Latios, and technically Rabbidsfin, Carkol. But
Goat.
I just think that obviously like Mega Pinsir would love to have some kind of removal, but I think also big thing with Zamazenta is it's not really like a clean. It's kind of a mon that you want to bring in and out to revenge kill things. It's not really going to be that sweeper kind of type. So I think it does come in and out. So I think spikes are actually like a really effective way to combat Zamazenta
Because
if
it
you have
can't
them.
run boots.
Yeah, it can't run boots. Obviously, rocks, it only takes 3%, so that's nice. I think like spikes are just also pretty annoying for this draft. Obviously, Latios barely ever wants to run defog. It has so many more better options to be running. This is like a decent defogger sometimes, but it's not the greatest thing in the world. It wouldn't be. I wouldn't want that to be my only like real option
Week to
for
week.
hazard
Yeah.
removal. I do agree with you guys that I think this has great offensive and defensive synergy with itself. I think the only defensive flaw really is like some flying types might be pretty annoying to deal with.
Also, not a
The
ton of
resist
recovery outside of like Sylveon Wish
resist
passing
is
and the
Carcoal.
Decidueye. You
Yeah, but
know.
I think it's more of a it's more of a team that's not looking to play the long game.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's fair.
especially with all these, breakers like Mamoswine and Mega Pinsir, these aren't Pokemon that are looking to take you, 50, 60 turns. They're looking to end the game, 25 turns in.
Sure,
So,
that's. I
yeah, I
think.
think if people can, get up hazards and keep them up against this team, it could definitely be pretty annoying for this team to deal with. But overall, I think it's a very solid team.
Yeah, definitely. I think just a lot of very scary offense out of this team. So that's what I see most here. Just a lot of wall breakers. Drapion setting up some T spikes or something could be scary too. So a lot of just like get worn down and blasted through or something. But so we'll see if the champ can repeat. Moving on to our boy Dan, who's not here to talk about his draft now. SMH. Let's have
Yeah.
Sean. Why don't we have you start us off here?
Right. So, I just want to say that Hoopa Unbound is a terrible Pokemon, and I just gotta lead off with that. Because it's really bad and it dies to every U-turner, which means that it gives up momentum very easily, and its speed stat isn't good enough to make up for this, I should say. So now with my Hoopa Unbound rant out of the way, I think generally it's like a pretty decent draft. I mean, I'm not looking at this and being like, oh wow, like how am I ever going to beat this team? But I'm not like, oh wow, this is going to be a free win either. I think it's just generally a pretty decent draft, both offensively and defensively. It's another one of those drafts that doesn't have a lot of recovery pretty much anywhere. So, he's going to be looking to end the game pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't think he has like any huge weaknesses. Like, yeah, ghost types, he doesn't have resist, but Chestnut has bulletproof for Shadow Ball, so it's immune to the best ghost move in the game. And Hoop Unbound can take care of a lot of ghosts as well because it does have a good special stat or special defense stat, and obviously it's a dark type. So
Yeah, I think for me, I think it's a draft that does a pretty good job of like supporting Lander Starion, but I don't know if Lander Starion's a good enough mon like standalone to carry this draft. Especially if you don't love Hoop Unbound, like Sean said, which I think Hoop Unbound's a little better than he's giving credit for. I think it does a few more things like, I think Trick Room sets on Hoop Unbound get slept on a little bit, for example. Um, I think it just does some things pretty well. But I understand also like the Sean's qualms with that Pokemon. My heart broke when he sniped Mega Aggron from me. That's a mon that I really really wanted. Another problem I kind of have with this draft is just a lack of clearing that's like pretty good because I don't think Colossal is really all of that, and the Landorus Therian really is already usually on a week to week basis struggling with 4 move slot syndrome, and having click defog on it, like I just said, this is a draft that's probably going to be relying on supporting, I think, Landorus Therian to be an offensive mon a lot, and if it's running defog, so just I don't love the hazard clearing options, and then kind of the Sean's point with the last draft, like I think if you set up like spikes on this draft, it'll have a lot of issues because a lot of these mons don't love running like boots either, to my estimation. I think Primarina's not a mon, for example, that I think he's gonna want to bring almost every week is a great mon, but I don't think boots Primarina is all that good. I think usually it's wants to run like more of a bulky like a Specs or Scarf set, even sometimes AV I know. Um, but there are still a lot of mons. What's funny is he drafted a lot of mons that like I personally adore, which I think is pretty funny. Like Premier is one I love. I've loved Mega Aggron for a long time. I really wanted it. Drudigan's another mon I'm a huge fan of. The only reason I don't draft Drudigan that often is because I usually draft Garchomp, and they're pretty like there's a lot of overlap between those two beyond just being Dragon types. Azelf is a mon that I actually convinced him to draft. I think Azelf is an awesome Pokemon that gets really slept on. Gives him some top end speed, insane offensive versatility, another fast pivot. It's one of the probably the I don't know. It's just a mon that takes a lot of offensive pressure off Landorus, which again I feel like this draft is a little reliant because like if Hoop Unbound is that slow, and that has a hard time coming in reliably all the time, I just feel like there's a lot of pressure on Landorus to be pretty offensive in these games. So Azelf I think does a great job of relieving that. Jutun, what do you think?
I completely disagree with what Sean said on Hoop Unbound. I think it is very good. I also think it is very good with webs, which he has. But
Dan loves Galvantula. He drafts that
But
thing all the time.
webs also sucks this gen because if you have, don't. It's not even like you have to. Oh, I have to run boots on every mon because he has webs. It's like, oh look, this mon would get outsped by Hoopa if he had webs up. I'll just throw boots on it, and now webs is usually only targeting like 2 or 3 mons on a draft, maybe a couple more in the right matchup. But I think now with boots, it's easier to just be like, all right, your webs are not affecting this mon, so love.
which is fair. I don't think putting boots on every single Pokemon that needs to outspeed Hoopa is what they're gonna do, seeing webs. So I don't think it'll be that much of an issue. Um, I just think it is very strong. I think that is all it does, but that's all it needs to do.
I do agree. I think Hoopa's a good mon. I think Sean's definitely lower on it than the average consumer. But we all have our thoughts on these various Pokemon. This is definitely also a pretty offensive draft overall, for what it's worth. Definitely, again, another draft, a lot like the last one, that's not looking to play the long game. But like, I don't know. I'm curious how it all kind of comes together is part of it. I don't like see a ton of. I don't want to say I see typing synergy, but maybe not role synergy is what I'm trying to say. Like we've got all these wall breakers, but I don't see a terrific cleaner, for example. I don't think Salazzle is really that good. It's just kind of one of those things. Like we don't have like
Yeah, the cleaner is basically like Scarf or Rock Polish Landorus.
yeah, which is kind of what I was getting at. Like Landers has to be this like fast offensive mon week to week, and then you're gonna lose to a lot of hazards, for example. I think, but I wish Dan were here to defend his draft or advocate for his draft, or I don't know. But I don't think this is a awful draft by any stretch. I think this is probably about an average draft for this league right now. All right, so let's keep going here. We got the Toronto Therians, coached by Kneecapper. Which is a hilarious name. Jitun, you want to start us off?
Sure. I think synergy-wise, this team gets together very well. I think minus Ninetales with Tapu Fini, but I think everything else is great. Galetas is obvious wall breaker, or honestly cleanup or anything, because Galeta is that. He has good defensive, good switching out, good defense. I already said that. Good setting. He doesn't have. Never mind. He has a lot of clearing. I don't know. It is a good team, and I like it. I think he is semi-weak to flying, but at the same time not because of Hippowdon.
Hippowdon's a pretty bad mon in my estimation overall.
Yeah,
But
I think Hippowdon has really bad synergy with Tapu Fini. Because a lot of what Hippowdon does is click toxic, and it's like, yay, I can't be toxic, but if I'm also not toxicking you, it's very easy to abuse Hippowdon.
It's actually a very good point.
this is like so my point about the last draft, about Dan's draft, this is a draft even more so. I feel like after Mega Gallade, there is very minimal amount of offense from the rest of this draft, and not even like great defense for what it's worth. It's a lot of mons that are like tweeners. I feel like Tapu Fini, is a good defensive mon, but not great because it doesn't have reliable recovery. So it's kind of like
Tapu Fini is a great defensive mon, even despite the recovery.
I don't know. Like having drafted in the past, I definitely feel like it was good, but just like gets worn down a lot if it's asked to do too much. Hippowdon, I think, is
ask it to do too much.
Hippowdon's a pretty good defensive mon again, but like overall not a great mon, especially the way it synergizes. I don't understand the Ninetales pickup like at all. To be completely honest with you,
For Heliolisk.
So we can run dry skin Heliolisk and
like I just don't understand it at all. Genuinely, I didn't even love the Heliolisk pickup. I like Heliolisk as a mon, but like this, I think Tapu Fini is pretty good at beating most opposing bulky waters in general, and Heliolisk's like best niche is like it's good at abusing opposing bulky waters. Um, so I don't know. I also like Jutun says good hazard setting, but I didn't think it was all that good. It's like you have to bring rocks hippo every week basically. um,
But you're already doing that.
I don't know. I feel like hippo does usually what once run like slack off, earthquake, toxic, and then like whirlwind a lot of times, so it's not like too passive. For example, especially on a draft that's flying weak, a lot of flying types will get like some kind of like setup option or have the potential to do a lot of damage. So I don't know. I just feel like Hippowdon can definitely fit rocks every week. It's just you never want to be in a situation where you have to bring one mon every week and it has to be a rocker every week. You know what I mean? Um, so I don't know. I just feel like Glade has to be so much of this team's offense every single week. And I loved Glade last season. I did really like it. I came to really appreciate it. But like it has to do so much on this draft every week. I don't know, Sean. What do
Yeah,
you
you're
think?
right. I think Noivern like really is not good. I mean, it's
Damn,
just
shots
it's
fired.
definitely like one of those tweeners. Like it definitely appreciates boots, and I can understand that, but I think it just doesn't deal quite enough damage, at least for my liking.
I agree. For what is what,
Um,
completely agree.
yeah, I think he has some mons here that have the potential to be used more offensively, and I'd like to see that happen. Like I think Tapu Fini offensively is actually pretty good, and people kind of gloss over that because it is so good defensively. That obviously, like we have the obvious Calm Mind, Draining Kiss sets, sometimes running Iron Defense that can be a great sweeper. But even like I've seen Specs or Life Orb Tapu Fini put in work against some teams because
I've seen
you know
Scarf
it
Tapu
hits.
Finney put in some work once upon a
Yeah,
time.
Yeah,
exactly.
me
Like
too.
it really can surprise people because I think it has more of the reputation of like, oh, this is like something like Milotic or Suicune, where it's like it's gonna sit there and be like an annoying bulky water,
I
but it
think
hits a lot
Suicune
harder
is the
than
obvious
those.
comp for it most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like Specs Nine Tails. I mean, I assume that he just drafted it to be like a Specs kind of wall breaker, or yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I don't, I
Other than
don't,
that,
I don't super get it. Like
I
for
mean,
example, like,
obviously with Specs, it's pretty nice because it's like almost double Specs with Sun
but
and
you run like also like you have a Tapu Fini, like that like you don't want its water type attacks to necessarily be halved all the time. And I'm not.
but you're not really. See, Feeney's like the one water you don't mind because you're not running really Scald anyway because of Misty
And
Terrain. So you're usually clicking Moonblast anyway. So I don't think
that's
there's that much
I guess
anti
that's
synergy
fair. And
there.
like I also want to make like I also don't think like like I Ninetales isn't such a every week spammable mon that opponents are gonna run like Solar Beam against you to hit your Tapu Fini now. Like
Right.
but it's not like you're running like Pelipper, so everyone's gonna run like Thunder instead of Thunderbolt. Because kind of what I'm saying. Like it's not a ubiquitous.
And even if people run Solar Beam, you can literally go into Hippowdon and cancel it.
It's kind of funny point actually. I didn't think about that. Double weather team right here. Doesn't Credilli get some sand synergy or sun synergy or something?
No, it has Storm Drain, which makes it immune to water, and then its other ability is like one of the crit ones.
Oh, okay. All right,
No,
never
it's
mind.
suction cups, which
Um,
is basically like grain,
but
but you
pretty
don't
good
get
speed tiers.
healing.
He covered his types pretty well overall. I just think, like to Sean's point, I think Sean's very fair. Like a lot of the mods this team like are gonna he's gonna need to find creative ways to run them offensively because otherwise it's like Glade's gonna be like having to do everything like and get every kill every week. It feels like. So like yeah, I think Sean's point about like finding creative ways to find offense on other places in this team will be kind of defining for the season of the Toronto Therians. Moving on, we're in the final three here, guys. We've come very far. We got our boy Ionite, coach of the Undead Legion. I helped him make his draft for the beginning a little bit. Ionite is, he's a player that's coming up, still learning the ropes about draft league. So I tried to help him get a draft that like wouldn't be too complicated to use, and just he could like focus on practicing like basic switches and like benefiting off of good fundamentals rather than having to make hard reads every single turn or be very creative to come up with niche sets. So I think like Heatran, Tango, Slowking, we tried to pick him up a Fire, Water, Grass core that just was going to be very easy to use on an average week. I think that's just I think it is a really good Firewater Grass core, but just Firewater Grass cores do have their obvious limitations. I think it is a little bit of a rudimentary way to build a draft, but I think for a player like Ionite, that not isn't necessarily a bad thing. Just because I didn't want to like stress him out with like exact niche sets every single week. Um, I actually liked his Umbreon pickup. He made that decision by himself, which I liked a lot. I think this is a pretty like bulky balanced draft. And I thought Landorus was his top tier pickup that I kind of had to convince him to go for. But I think it's just a pretty easy Pokemon to use overall because it's just a pretty like fundamental, insanely powerful wall breaker. You don't like have a ton of versatility, but you are good at what you do. And I think he's got a lot of Mons like that for what it's worth. Like not a lot of versatility on this draft from Mon to Mon, but I think Mons are good in their respective roles and are not too like demanding as far as I don't know, like reads and high skill, high risk, high reward plays, things like that. Sean, what do you think?
I'm not a huge fan of this draft just because I think like half of it pretty much folds to taunt. So that's kind of my concern. Like I feel like picking up Galarian Corsola and Ferroseed,
Yeah,
I didn't like
he
those
ran
low
the
tier
back half of the
picks.
draft by himself. I helped him with the first four picks, basically.
Yeah, I just don't love those picks because it kind of compounding on what the draft was already weak to,
Also,
which was
his hazard clearing
taunt
is
users and just basically just stall breakers in general because he has obviously that very bulky team.
also he. I just realized. Sorry, Jen, I want to get your opinion as well here, but his hazard clearing is non-existent. It's
Mhm.
Landorus, and you know, you're like that's not good. I just realized that, so that's a really big problem that he's gonna like need to patch up in free agency, in my opinion. Like will need to. Obviously, you have regenerator mons. They run boots. Heat Train can run boots, so like it's not like you can't get around it, but he doesn't have good clearing. Like people are gonna run things to abuse that, right? Um,
Yeah, and obviously like you're gonna run knockoff too, and because of the way his team is, it's gonna be hard for him to kill things quickly. So he's gonna have to like switch around in order to beat things. I think
yeah,
the hazard game is probably not gonna be fun for him like all season.
yeah, I think he's going to have to make a couple key free agents there. I also think several very beneficial missing types on a draft like this.
Yeah, I
I
was
think
gonna say
I think
he.
sorry, just one last thought, and then we'll get you in. I just think a lot of fighting types learn knockoff, and I think fundamentally those Pokemon will be gigantic problems for this draft in general. Like missing a fairy type, like fairy types are what's the best answer to fighting types to learn knockoff. And I just think a lot of I'm realizing like a lot of those will be able to very easily break this team down. I think. Sorry, Jatun, go ahead.
It's okay. I think it is very weird that he doesn't have a dragon type or a fairy type. I also think it is very like not weird, but he is very weak to like his only dark and ghost resist is Umbreon. So if that dies, it just everything with knockoff.
And it is a
Just
pretty
fails.
good ghost resist, but
It's I don't know. I'm not a fan of Umbreon because I think it's just too passive. I think like especially with like dark types, like right dark types, if they set up like a substitute or a taunt on Umbreon, like what the hell is Umbreon doing? It's not doing anything. So it's just be pretty much free reign for these dark types against his draft, and that's why I didn't love the picks like
yeah,
Galarian Corsola and Ferroseed because it's kind of like I'm already losing to these kinds of Pokemon, and these are just more Pokemon that lose to them.
yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I just think like this team is perhaps the most knockoff weak draft we've seen this whole time. Um, and also compounded by the fact that, like Sean, you said, like even if he runs boots to beat Hazard Stack or help against Hazard Stack, like people are gonna run knockoff against him, and then he's gonna be in a tough spot constantly, you know. So I can imagine some free agents that he'll be asking me to help with for the back half of this draft. Um, but I thought his top end was pretty good, just for what it's worth. I thought we did a good job picking up a core that I think he'll be able to use effectively, and then just needs
Yeah,
some
it doesn't
support.
seem it seems like a fairly easy draft to use,
Yeah, and
I
then
would
just
say.
need some support later on. I think maybe some changes here and there. All right, we're in the final two here. We got our boy Jatoon, coach of the Vancouver Golducks. Jatoon, let's have you start us off with how you're feeling, what you're thinking.
I feel weird talking about myself, but I
You
don't
don't
care
have
what
to, I
anyone else.
guess.
I know. I like my team. I think it is. I mean, I have to think this, but I think it's one of the best teams in the league. I think I did a very good job on rounding everything out that I needed. Everything works well together. Everything that I need is there. Um, there are a couple things I wish I could have done differently, like verbally not having Vaporeon and having Manaphy instead, which I know is stupid, but it would have given me more points to work somewhere else.
I think Vaporeon's a good mon for what it's worth. I think Flip Turn has done it a lot of good. As a person who had it last season, I think it does run into 4 move slot syndrome a lot because, and that happens a little bit with any Pokemon that has Wish as its reliable recovery. Because if you really want to benefit that Pokemon, you need Wish and Protect. But then Vaporeon
That's
now,
why I drafted Alomomola because it doesn't have that issue because it doesn't have moves.
fair enough. But then Vaporeon also, really wants to run like Flip Turn, but you also want to run some combination of, like Sean said last video, Scald, Ice Beam. But then you also really want to run like Toxic so you can do like meaningful damage sometimes. So it does run the 4 move slot syndrome, but it does a good job of finding the moves it needs for a particular matchup if you do a good job of like prepping with it. And like I think it's very versatile, like can be bulky on either side that you need it to be. Can check a lot of things very, very well. So I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised by it.
I'm definitely excited. What do you guys think?
Sean, go ahead.
I think generally I like the draft. I think it is kind of another one of those drafts where I think maybe you're lacking a little bit on immediate power. A lot of the more offensive mons are either more setup mons or like Spectrier is obviously like a really weird one, um, given its coverage, and it kind of already is a setup mon because you have to chip things down. Definitely, it's not come in and break walls. But other than that, I think I do like the draft a lot. I think it's pretty solid defensively.
I
Just like Mandiba, Steelix, Vaporeon seems like pretty solid. Obviously, there's going to be things that can break through, but I think for the most part, it's pretty solid draft. And Kamo is definitely a good mon to kind of abuse some things that might abuse the others. I think in terms of giving it free setup or something. But yeah, I guess my only concern is like fairies might be a little annoying like fairies that can beat Steelix might be a little bit annoying defensively. That's kind of my one gripe, but overall I think it's a pretty solid
Yeah,
draft.
I think the fairies that can be fixes, but so many of them got Mystical Fire, is
Right.
and like or had Focus Blast, so just something to be careful of. I think a little of this draft's also a little Ghost Week, um, but for what it's worth, also like Spectre, like the best Ghost types are like Ghost type attacks are coming from offensive Ghost types, and Spectre's actually pretty good into most of those because it's usually the faster one of the two. But because on the flip side of that, the more I think about it, actually, if people run Scarf then to beat Spectre with their offensive Ghost types, Mandibus can usually come in all day, or you have a bulletproof Kamo to come in. So you're actually, typing wise, maybe a little weak to offensive Ghost types, but I think actually the Mons you have function in such a way where it is tough to find the right set perhaps on those offensive Ghosts. You are also like to Sean's point, I think lacking a little bit of immediate power. I think Spectre, like he said, is the best one. I think Spectre is just a pretty powerful breaker. But I also think just there's a lot of unpredictability in some of these Pokemon. Like so, especially your top two, I think are really terrific Mons. And just I know like prepping against Mew can be kind of frustrating because it can be pretty challenging to figure out what it's gonna do. And I think what's good about your draft is it doesn't box Mew into any one role. You have a lot of clearing and setting, so you're not forcing Mew to do like defensive things on a week to week basis, so it can operate offensively. But a lot of your mons that set hazards or clear hazards can easily just do other things or run other moves in those spots. So Mew can still. So you did a good job. This is a good Mew draft, is what I'm trying to say. You didn't like box Mew into a role and you let it do its thing, which is be a glue, fill any role kind of thing, do anything you needed to. And then Kamo, in a similar vein, Like obviously it's not as versatile as Mew, but the fact that it has so many different offensive sets, both physical and special, but can also go defensive pretty functionally, even be a rocker. I think I really liked the first two picks. I think they're really tough to prep for Mons in general, and I think you did a pretty good job supporting them with the rest of your draft. So I actually like this draft a pretty good amount too.
What I'm hearing is it's the best draft.
Uh, I wouldn't go quite.
You missed mine. Sorry.
But no, this is definitely
So
a top
Noah
half
just made
draft.
free agents, by the way.
Oh, great. So this video is now irrelevant. No, it's fine. He'll have to deal with the consequences. Going to our last team here, we got the Yapun Vile Plumes. It's a fun to say name, maybe the most fun in the league. Um, Sean, you want to start us off?
Well, first of all, clearly how fun the team name is basically the entire battle already. So it's clearly got the best draft in the league. But actually, being serious, like I really love this Zero Order Mega Metacham core. I think that's like incredible because I think Zero Order is one of the best cleaners in the game. Also, it can support itself by wearing down its checks throughout the game. But obviously, Mega Metacham, fantastic breaker. And I like Crocodile a lot too, both in terms of being another cleaning threat with like a Scarf Moxie set or just being some kind of defensive set, maybe that helps out against, psychic types that are trying to wall Mega Metacham. And,
Yeah.
obviously, you're not going to run rocks every week on it, but it is a good rocker in some matchups, that you're running defensive.
Absolutely.
Not really a huge fan of Salamence this gen. I think it's just kind of in a weird spot, even though it does like boots. And then, he obviously has Ambipom at 115, but other than that, he's got nothing between Zero
Yeah.
Aura and
Yeah.
Metachams, which I don't love.
I think
So,
Ambipom's an underrated Pokemon, but it is still a big gap there, and it's his only like mon in between is an E tier mon. So
right. Yeah, I think overall I like the draft a lot. It's definitely got its fair share of holes, I would say.
I think it's a pretty reasonable draft as well. I'm a little less high on some of these top mons. I'm not as big of a Crocodile fan as Sean. That may be a mistake on my part because I know it does a few different things pretty well. I've never been a huge Weezing Galar fan. I know it gets a lot of hype because it's unique typing and different roles it can fill as far as like different abilities and check different things. But I've just never quite been as high on it. I think it's a little more passive than you want it to be at that point range for a mon without reliable recovery. And I guess it gets pain split, but like that's not exactly reliable recovery. I like some of the low tier pickups. I think Shuckle's pretty cool. Like I think Shuckle's a mon that gets like memed a lot, but for what it's worth, on a draft with like a Mega Metacham and a Salamence that can be like wall breaking threats a little bit. Like Salamence obviously can be a sweeping threat. I think Shuckle's webs can be very appreciated, especially by Mega Metacham. So I think that's pretty useful. He's got some defense here with like Tangle and Empoleon, but overall this is a pretty offensive draft. So I think it's going to be a lot of like push the pedal to the metal, like literally like lead Shuckle, rocks, webs, and then see if you can punch some holes with like Metacham or Croak or something and Zero or clean out. So I think it's got a pretty linear game plan for most weeks, just because there's like most of these mons operate in pretty clear roles. In my estimation, but a good draft. I'd say average to above average drafts. I don't love Sean talks about this a lot, but I don't love Empoleon as like your only like water type because it is also weak to fire. But I guess he does have a Chandelure to be Flash Firemon, so
Yeah, and
it's a bit.
Salamence. That's I was thinking about that too, but he does have like Salamence. I guess that's kind of the one good thing about it is it can definitely beat a lot of fire types by running like
Yeah,
special or just
Earthquake or Hydro Pump
setting
or
up on
something.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
June, what are you thinking?
I it's I don't know. It's a difficult team to say that I like it, and it's also a difficult team to say that I don't like it. I want to see it like actually used. Like I want to see how he uses everything. If Zero Aura and Crocodile and Salamence, and if he changes things up with those, I think it is a very good team. If he runs this kind of the same sets every week, I think it is a very bad team.
So That kind of sounds like similar to what I was saying. Just like mons that can maybe have to, maybe a little linear in their game plan in this context of this team.
Yeah, so if he finds a way to mix things up, I think it's really good. Like he has a lot of options to go with just about every single Pokemon except like the obvious ones. But if he moves things around and if he changes it up, it's a very good team.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely fair. And yeah, like I've said before, this is a pretty offensive draft here. So, like for example, I think like Tangle's a mon is gonna be pretty hard to bring for this draft on an average week because it's so passive on a draft that otherwise needs to be so offensive. Um, I don't know, but we'll see. Guys, that has been.
But he likes Shuckle in the draft, by the way.
But Shuckle is good on hyper offense teams because it can like do its lead thing, and like run infestation encore to like not be set up fodder. Like Shuckle is good on hyper offense teams. Like Tangela does something different. Like Shuckle is that offensive lead or like utility lead on a lot of offensive teams. So I'm not calling it not passive, but it doesn't get abused as much as I feel like Tangela potentially could. I guess Tangela gets like sleep powdered, but that's you're gonna like I missed a couple sleep powders back in the day, you know. But guys.
Yep. I miss sleep powder. This mod fucking sucks.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed these videos. Let us know what you guys thought about your teams in this video here today. If you agree, disagree, want to share some thoughts about what we said or about various teams or your own. If you want to make some free agents, this is your time to do it before week 1 starts.
A couple of people just made free agents.
So some of our commenters all pretty obsolete, which is sick, but otherwise I think we're all really looking forward to the season. It's one of the biggest seasons of Draft Classic yet, so it should be a real heck of a time. Any closing remarks, you guys?
No,
I don't think so.
All right, well, easy enough. See you guys later.
Don't worry.
No. All right, I'll see you guys later. Have a good one, everyone.